ZANU-PF just said 2030 must happen, and they've directed the both the party and the government to make sure that the necessary amendments are put into place. But let us take a look on the barriers to the 2030 agenda itself.
So you are being a constitutional lawyer, I'm
yes,
sure.
I am.
What needs to happen for ZANU-PF's agenda to carry on, if they indeed are trying to get a third term? What needs to happen?
So the legal processes are these. Firstly, a constitutional bill has to be gazetted.
Okay.
That constitutional bill must lie in state for 90 days.
Okay.
With other bills, it's just 14 days before you have a first reading in Parliament. When that bill has been gazetted for 90 days, after 90 days, it can then be tabled in Parliament for its first reading.
Okay.
When it's tabled in Parliament for its first reading,
can I just ask, why 90 days and not 14?
That's the Constitution, because it's such an important bill. The Constitution is so important.
Right.
So I mean, the Constitution can be equated to normal legislation.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why the Constitution specifically says
90 days.
it's part of protecting the Constitution. Right. And the idea behind the 90 days is that so that everyone in the country knows what is happening. So there's a mandatory gazetting for 90 days period. After that, it must be tabled in Parliament. After that, the Constitution demands that any law, there must be public consultation, Section 143 of the Constitution. So this bill has to be taken to the countryside for consultation. And of course, as we have seen in any bills where there's public interest, for instance, the death penalty, people will flock. Mm-hmm. And on this one, I can assure you that people are going to flock.
So public consultation does not necessarily mean referendum.
It's a different stage. I'm coming to that. Right. I'm coming to the referendum. Then, when these consultations have taken place, the relevant committee, perhaps they will form a special committee, or they will use the Justice and Legal Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, who will then report to Parliament. When it reports to Parliament through its chairperson, what is called the second reading debate starts. When the second reading debate starts, the bill will then be referred to committee. The committee is the actual drafting. If it passes, it goes for a second reading. So the MPs will say yes, it then goes for a third reading. At the third reading now, 2/3 of members of the National Assembly must approve.
Okay.
So this whole agenda of buying out members of parliament, of creating characters like Chabangu, is intended now to secure the 2/3 majority that is required. So that's in the National Assembly. It then goes to the Senate, where a similar process starts: first reading, second reading, and then 2/3. 2/3 of the membership of the Senate must vote. Once the bill has been approved by 2/3 of Parliament, that is to say 2/3 in the National Assembly and 2/3 in the Senate, it must then go to a referendum, because it is a bill altering term limits in the country. The referendum is a simple process, Baba. The referendum simply asks whether you are saying yes or no. Because we are going to campaign and live in the mountains to get that no vote. There's a second problem. Mm-hmm. The Constitution then says, when you change this Constitution and you remove the term limits, it doesn't benefit the incumbent. Mm-hmm.
It benefits the next.
It benefits the next. But you can change that provision.
Same process.
Yeah, we call it the Abdoulaye Wade provision. Because President Abdoulaye Wade amended the constitution for a third time, and Senegalese said it can't benefit you, and he lost at that stage. And that's why President Sall came in, and as fate as as you know, President Macky Sall also tried to change the constitution to benefit him. Yet he came through a process of rejecting a third term agenda. Right. That's why you can't trust people. But anyway, to come back to the legal process. Another referendum is required now to change the constitutional provision that says you can't benefit. That's when we will see Trababala's true colors, because all along you'll be saying, I don't want Vandova Akuda. Now when he says, now the Akuda, the constitution has to go to a referendum for the second time. Baba, pakaipa. Tusangana makomo. Tusangana kwa Chendabwe. Tusangana ku Lotito. Tusangana ku Eskodini. Tusangana ku Binga. Tusangana ku Cholocho. He can't win those referendums. He cannot win those referendums.
Okay.
So to put it very crudely, the idea of a third term agenda is fraught with such legal landmines that you would have to be so ambitious, so insane, so drunk, or both to ever think that it can actually carry out and see the light of the day.
These are a lot of shots.
This is what Emerson Mnagagwas said is actually planning when it comes to the issue of the third term. Is it a third term? No. When it comes to the issue of the 2030 agenda, what does the question say? Section 91 to 96, it speaks about the limits to president to 2 5-year terms. And when you're looking at Mnagagwa's current term, it goes from 2023 to 2028, which means under normal circumstances, it cannot go beyond 2028. So Mnagagwa cannot legally stay up to 2030. And this is what Biti is explaining, to say, okay, Mnagagwa, we have to amend the constitution for that to happen. Our biggest problem is, are we going to have a referendum, or ZANU-PF is simply going to ignore the issues of the referendum, and they will simply do whatever which they want, knowing fully well that no legal ramifications will follow? Because it's no longer about constitutionalism. It's no longer about what the constitution says. It's no longer about that. It's now about, is the ZANU-PF willing to go or not? Because these people, they are willing to do whatever it takes for them to remain in power, for them to continue to be in charge. They'll do everything and anything. And I think that is the reason why Advocate Fadzaimare is weighing in and is saying that the situation in Zimbabwe now, it goes beyond the issue of going to court. It's no longer about us saying to go to court. Yes, we need to have the first referendum, number one, to repeal or replace the 2013 constitution by key term limit clauses. And the second referendum must ratify the new amended version with a reset of presidential terms. And, you know, the issue is Mnagagwa will have to benefit from whatever which comes. But let me tell you one thing. I don't think that Mnagagwa is fighting this whole issue of 2030 with the sole aim to be the leader of ZANU-PF. No. Mnagagwa does not want to benefit from the 2030 issue. Mnagagwa simply wants to isolate General Chiwenga and leave Tagrey in place. which means whatever amendments we are going to see coming, it will be an issue of extending the term of the presidential term up to 7 years, which means Mnagagwas serve 14 years, which is close to 3 terms. Which means automatically when Tagwire comes in, he will serve 14 or even 16 years in office. Which means for the next 16 years, from 2028, 16 years from 2028, people will be in the hands of Kudakwashe Tagwire if he is alive. Then from Kudakwashe Tagwire, you get into the hands of another person. How is that going to be possible? They are going to fight for the amendment of the constitution to allow the presidential term to be extended up to 2030. But they don't care about Mnagagwa benefiting. They simply care about any other person, which means after that, you might see Mnagagwa ceding power to another person. The agenda now is to make Tagwire the vice president of the country. The agenda is now to stop the ZANU-PF Congress, which is due in 2027. Which means if the party is now working on the 2030 agenda, they are no longer relying on the Congress, which, okay, tichaenda Congress is going to say, because anu wachitaura tuendere ku Congress, isisu tina president ari kuenda ku 2030. That is how they are going to take out and outmaneuver General Chiwenga from the whole process within ZANU-PF. Once they've done that, they'll then proceed with the agenda yekuti vatungamirire kusvika pavari kuda. That is the whole issue. This is something which is very simple and straightforward. And for those who understand things, they will need to understand kuti kana tikamirira tanzi tichazorwa kana zvadai, it won't happen. Personally, I believe kuti Team Chiwenga will not fight until ZANU-PF starts to amend its own constitution to say we are foregoing the 2027 Congress simply because of the recommendations and the resolutions which were made by 2 conferences here, 2024 and 2025. So ndo pari kuuya intervention ipapo. Zvekuzoti hanzi amendment yazoita sei, it will not see the light of the day because ipapo ndo pachamisanwa ipapo. So it's very, very interesting to see what happens, but this is my opinion, this is my thought.